Hi everyone, and welcome to the welcome back to the Shadow Den. I am ShadowRaven, and today I am doing my top 10 favorite Pokemon types. This was originally going to be both of us, but poor Shadowfang's not feeling all that great today, so he will probably post his video on Wednesday. But today I am definitely going to be doing mine for sure, and I am going to start off with my number 10. And my number 10 favorite Pokemon type is Steel. Now, I actually didn't really get into the Steel type until Gen 3 with Skarmory, but I have realized, though, that once I got the chance to actually raise a Scizor, I absolutely fell in love with it. Once Oris came out, I finally got the chance to raise a Metagross, and at first I didn't think I was going to like it just because of its overall appearance, but when I used this thing, it was a boss. I loved this thing. This thing would sweep teams left, right, and center. I had so much fun with freaking Metagross. I was so thrilled that I actually got the chance to raise one. And to boot, it was one of the shiny event ones. I was thrilled. I like my shinies, what can I say? Aggron, I was also impressed with. Did not raise that until Oris. It's going to be really kind of a depressing list in a sense, because a lot of these Pokemon that I really like nowadays, I did not raise in the original versions. I know, smack me across the head, call me a dummy, because I am. And then Lucario, I usually don't like fighting types. Lucario is probably the one exception because of its Steel typing. It has a really good moveset. It's just a Pokemon that I really enjoy using. Plus, overall, its appearance is pretty freaking cool. And then Bisharp is, I think, is mainly for appearance's sake. I actually still have not gotten the chance to raise one. I've caught a couple of Pawniards here, but they've always ended up in the box, and they just kind of sit there. So that one, I love it for its looks, but I haven't really had a chance to raise one yet. Maybe I should probably say I haven't really put in the effort to raise one yet. It is on my list of things to do. It is actually on one of my potential competitive lists, if I ever get around to doing that, which hopefully I will. My number 9 is Fairy types. Now, when I first heard Fairy type, I'm thinking, really? Fairies are going to be beating out dragons? Well, I was actually very surprised with a couple of them. I mean, there's some of them that's, for most of them, it's the look of them is the main thing I don't like with a lot of them. But when I saw Sylveon in all the trailers and such, I was like, okay, I've got to give this one a shot. And Sylveon was the first fairy that I raised, and I fell in love with it. I have re-raised Sylveon 3-4 times, and I absolutely love it. Every single time I've raised it, I have never had a problem. It's always one of the fastest levelers that I can get, and it is just, aside from poison and a couple of other things, poison and steel mainly, it's a sweeper. I mean, granted, I always had trouble with the steel Elite Four member with Sylveon, but I usually have a couple of fire types to back me up on that one. And then when I found out that one of my favorite psychic types, Gardevoir, got the fairy type and became a dual fairy type, yeah, there was no issue with me grabbing a Ralts right off the bat. Florges kind of surprised me. I was thinking, Flebebe's this dinky little fairy sitting on a flower. I mean, come on. I was not impressed. But it's like, okay, so I'll catch it because it's the new fairy type. And then the first one I caught, I had just boxed. But after I decided to do a couple of type teams, I started off with the fairy team, thinking it's like, okay, so I'll be able to raise a Sylveon. And I just grabbed 5 other fairy types. Dedenne, I was very disappointed with. Never again. But with Florges and Klefki blew my mind. Because I am not one of those people that usually uses any kind of stat moves or setup moves. I am pretty much a straight-up attacker. And Klefki is one of those that's usually a little bit more support-based, a little bit more with rocks, usually with the rocks and such for setups. And I've never really been that type of battler, but Klefki, for the most part with that, even though I was using him mainly for stealth rocks, I was really impressed. I mean, he's got a good defense, pretty decent offense. And yeah, I just thought it was kind of fun to use. Plus his little, yeah, he's funny. I liked him. And then Florges was really impressive, mainly because I was thinking, okay, little bitty flower, yeah, okay, so this thing's probably going to be really freaking weak. And Flabebe kind of was. Floette was a little bit more impressive, but then I got stoned, I evolved it into Florges, and it's like, what the heck? This goes from like not meh, kind of meh to dead, dead. Holy crap! This thing's awesome. And yeah, I usually try to stick with the blue one whenever I do raise it, because I actually prefer that overall look, either the blue or the purple, which is hard to find. And then my number 8 is water type. Now, water types, you know, considering what one of my other favorite types is, you think I really wouldn't be as fond of them. I like my water types. I really do. I mean, granted, huge fan of evolutions in general, so of course I love Vaporeon. The generation that I will use only the water starter is Gen 5. Now, I kind of like Emboar. He's really not that bad. I'm sorry to say, I hate Superior. I love the way it looks, but its stats are so horrible that I will never raise one again. But in that particular generation, I saw Oshawott, and I'm like, okay, you know, I usually start with the Fire Starter, but in the last generation, you know, Sinnoh I didn't, and Unova, I saw this little Oshawott, and I was thinking, okay, I've got to see what this thing turns into. And then goes to Dewott, and then Samurott. Samurott! I love my Samurott. I really, oh my gosh. Freaking Samurott was my heavy hitter. Every single time I go through that game. Every single time. I always get my Samurott, so that way I always have my heavy hitter. Definitely a staple on pretty much any water-based team I ever do. Will always be a Samurott, just because. I love this thing. It is amazing. But there is one water type that beats it out, and that's Blastoise. You can't beat the original water starter. I will say I did not start with Blastoise, otherwise water typing would have been near the very top of the list. But when I did finally get around to using Squirtle way back when I was playing Pokemon Red, I really enjoyed it. I mean, obviously it helped me sweep Brock easily, and it was a level 8 if I remember correctly. It's been a few years. But I love my Squirtle. And then Wartortle and Blastoise were just as awesome. And now that Blastoise has its Mega form, it's even more so. I mean, this thing is freaking an attack wall. So, yeah, Blastoise. Then, of course, you know, Dugong. What can I say? I like my Seals for the most part. And Dugong is just freaking gorgeous. Greninja. Now, Kalos, I like Kalos. I like the starters for the most... No, okay, I like 2 out of 3 of the starters, I should say. And I thought I was going to love Fennekin, and I do. I like Fennekin. It's Braxian and Delphox that kind of dragged Fennekin down, in my opinion. I personally don't really like their appearances. Their movesets are okay. But because of that, when I picked Froakie, which I wasn't really impressed with. I mean, he was cute, but I didn't really think that I was going to like him that much. Frogadier wasn't that bad appearances-wise, but then when it evolved into a Greninja, I was like, okay, so yeah, Ninja Frog. I am not really surprised. And I think the only thing that disappointed me about Greninja is the power of Water Shuriken. I mean, that, in my opinion, is the worst thing about it, but, you know, you can compensate with all sorts of other moves. So, you know, if it's one move, that's really kind of the worst thing about him. He's freaking fast as heck. I mean, that's one thing I really love about him, is he's definitely got speed priority for most of the time whenever I'm using him. He's got a really good speed, really good attack, defense. He is definitely my go-to water type. I think overall, with maybe 2 exceptions. Now, my top 2 water, I'm definitely going to end up having to do a water list after this or whatnot. But Gyarados and Milotic. These 2 are my water babies. I have always loved Gyarados, just because Gen 1, that was probably the... I wasted the 500 Poké Dollars to get the Magikarp. I saw it, and I bought a fish. Okay. I sent it out into battle against a Zubat. Splash! I was like, okay, so it's a fish that has a completely useless move. Well, I raised it up, thinking it's like, oh, okay, it's gotta learn something. Level 15, it finally learns Tackle. I was like, holy crap! So, I was all thrilled. I had finally had a water Pokemon that had a decent move. Hits level 20. Turns into a boss. I was like, oh, is this a dragon? wasn't a dragon, just water flying. But I fell in love with Gyarados pretty much on sight. And then, of course, the fact that, this thing could wreck teams like no other. Yeah, that was just kind of that's why Gyarados is my original water baby. And then my Milotic, which I did not raise until Oris. Once again, I didn't raise it in the original. But once I got a Milotic, though, basically Gyarados' female counterpart. And, I mean, granted, even though they can both be male and female, Milotic, to me, is the feminine version of Gyarados. Just as powerful, freaking amazing wall. I love using Milotic as a wall, and I do it a lot. Shadowfang hates it when I do that, because I stall out battles forever doing that. But, yeah, Milotic is definitely one of my favorites to use. I'm actually in the process of trying to breed a shiny one right now, and it's taken a while. As do most breeding shinies. As, most breeding does with shinies and or stats. Number 7 is Bug. Yeah, I'll admit, I like my bugs. I love me my Gyarados, my Scolipede, Venomoth, Scyther, and Scizor. Masquerain I was really impressed with. Volcarona. And for a legendary firebug that you can get pretty darn easily once you get Surf in the original Black and White. Yeah, I thought it was like, okay, so it's a legendary bug, it's a legendary firebug. Yet you just counteracted one of its own weaknesses, for the most part. But I actually love this thing. I know it's not really, I know it's somewhat decent and competitive, but for the most part, I'm not really a competitive battler. So for me, Volcarona is definitely one of my favorites to use in just regular gameplay. I mean, whenever I can catch it. And then, of course, there's that island over by... Oh, man. I'll remember it eventually, don't mind me. But it's in Oris, in one of the islands that you can land on by using Soar. And I can't remember what it is. If you guys remember, just write it in the comments. Call me a dummy. Won't surprise me. And then Vivillon. Now, usually I am not really all that fond of the bugs that you get right off at the beginning of the game. I mean, I like Butterfree and I like Beedrill and such. But for the most part, once you level, you can level them up. They're great for starting off. But for the most part, for me, they've always ended up in the box just because stat-wise they seem to fall behind everyone else. Vivillon was not the same. I raised up a Vivillon once or twice, and I was planning on just sticking it in the box, but when it was holding its own along with everyone else, I was like, okay, let's see how far we can get you without me wanting to box you. Yep, Vivillon made it through the Elite Four afterward. So I was very impressed with Vivillon. It's definitely one of my favorite bug types, with the exception of some of the other ones. And, Gyarados, and of course, Galvantula. Galvantula, by far, is probably one of my favorite bugs, second only to Gyarados. Which is really funny, because I'm not really a huge fan of spiders, but I love Gyarados. Number 6 is electric types. And obviously, Jolteon is definitely going to be on this little section. I love my Ampharos, Luxray. In my opinion, one of the best Pokemon in Gen 4 is Luxray. I loved Luxray. Luxray was amazing. I honestly would love to see it get a mega form that is electric dark. I think that would be so freaking cool, because it is such a it's a powerhouse. Obviously it does have some weakness, it's like most types, it has a couple of weaknesses that it could get switched, or that it could get improved. That's the reason I think a mega form would be awesome. Plus with an electric dark type, I just think would be freaking sick. Magnezone. I was very impressed with Magnezone, because at the time I saw it and I was like, okay, so I wasn't really fond of the Magnemite line just because I wasn't really... appearances. That one was purely based on appearance. But I decided to use a Magnezone because Shadowfang told me that I absolutely had to. And I was like, alright, try it out. Yeah, once again, it was one of those that... It's like, okay, looks are extremely deceiving. Coming from my perspective, they're deceiving. I was very, very impressed. I did not think that it was going to be... It's like I knew it was probably going to be a bit of a defensive wall. I was not expecting it to be a sweeper. And I was extremely thrilled. And then, of course, Heliolisk. Overall, I like the look. I mean, I will say its stats are not the best. It can definitely, even after super training and with the right natures and all that, It's still a little bit lacking. It could have used a little bit of, could have used a little bit of an attack or especially a defense boost. It could have definitely used one of those. But for the most part, I liked Heliolisk. I had fun with it. Number 5? Now we're getting into the good stuff. Number 5, Ghosts. I love, love, love my Ghost types. By far, I can't even pick a favorite Ghost type. They're all too freaking amazing. Giratina, obviously, is one of my favorites, not just because it's a legendary, but because he looks amazing, and he is so much fun to use. I think Gengar, Frostless, and Sableye, Doublade. I still haven't evolved mine. I've still kept mine as a Doublade. I just haven't gotten that far yet, at that point. But so far, all of them are so much fun to use. Chandelure. I love Chandelure. I love the combo type, and I love the way it looks. Freaking beautiful. If I could actually have a Chandelure in my house as a chandelier, I would be perfectly happy. I mean, people probably wouldn't survive coming in and out of my house. But it's the principle of the thing. It's a chandelier, Yeah, either way. I have a weird sense of taste, don't mind me. Number 4, Dragon. I would say that this is self-explanatory, but it's not. I was born in the year of the dragon, which has something to do with it, but I have always been a fan of dragons. I mean, even before Pokemon came out, I was dragon obsessed. I'm not as much anymore, but I still love my dragons. I love, and out of the couple of new ones that we've gotten, Dragalge and Noivern, I freaking love them. I mean, Dragon Poison, I think, is an awesome combination. So that way you can combat the fairy types. That way you kind of lose that weak. Not really lose, but you have an advantage against that particular weakness. And then, of course, there's some of the classics. I mean, Dragonite, Speed Boss right there. And I love my dragons. I love, especially Salamence and Flygon are definitely two of my favorites. But yeah, dragons. Should be all that I need to say on that one. Number 3. Psychics. This is because I am not just an attacker, I am a special attack battler. Espeon was actually the main reason that I fell in love with Psychics. I liked Abra and Kadabra, and I didn't really mind Alakazam from the first generation, but for me, that's like, okay, so Psychic types, they're powerful, yes, but I wasn't really impressed with their appearance. My opinion on that has since changed. I really like the way that Alakazam and the Abra, Kadabra, and Alakazam line looks now. It's not because they've changed, it's because I've changed. My opinion on that has changed by quite a bit. But Espeon was really the one that got me into Psychic types. And then, of course, Gardevoir was one of my first Gen 3 loves. I mean, I fell in love with this thing, once I got past the Ralts and the Kirlia stages, which, that was the hard part, getting past those 2 stages. Once I got a Gardevoir, though, yeah, it's all said and done. At that point, that clinched my love of Psychic types for that one. And then, Meowstic and Esper and Meowstic are definitely, out of the new ones, definitely impressed. And then for Gen 5, Sigilyph is actually pretty cool. I didn't raise one until X and Y when I was doing my Psychic team, and I didn't really, because it's Psychic Flying, I wasn't really too sure on it. Yeah, it's definitely worth raising. You don't need it just for Fly. It can hold its own pretty darn well. And then, going all the way back to the Steel typing and such, Metagross. Steel Psychic, yep, that was really the major reason that I was willing to raise it, is because it was a Psychic type. And that was part of the reason that I fell in love with the Steel type. Yeah, number 2, Fire types. My first Pokemon that I ever raised was a Charmander. Yep. No, really, that's not it. I promise you. No, that's usually the primary reason. But, and usually that would push that into number 1, but number 1 is reserved for another one of my babies, my primary baby. But, sticking with Fire, I love Fire. I gotta say, I'm a little bit of a pyromaniac. Just a smidgen of one. Okay, maybe a huge pyromaniac. I will sit there and I will watch a candle burn. I mean, I'm a little bit of a pyro. But, and then, Gen 1 had several awesome fire types that I really liked. I loved Arcanine. Rapidash was really impressive. Vulpix, the Vulpix, Ninetales, Growlithe, Arcanine, obviously Charizard. I love my fire types. I love the Gen 1 fire types. Gen 2 has some really good ones, obviously. I started with Cyndaquil. Gen 3, I started with Torchic. Gen 4, that's where I actually stopped using fire types for 2 generations, because Gen 4 and Gen 5, I wasn't really impressed with the fire types. Both of them was because of looks, and I did eventually use Tepig, and Emboar, I had to admit, Emboar is pretty freaking cool. And as I said earlier, I love Fennekin, but Braxian and Delphox just kind of killed it for me. But for the most part, yeah, I love my fire types. I mean, every single team I have always has at least one fire type, and it can be either just a straight up fire type or a fire duel, but I always have a fire type on my team. So, you know, by chance, if you ever end up running into me or whatnot, if you ever end up running into me and you want to battle, know this, I keep a fire type on my team. So, bring a water type. Yes, I did basically just tell you how to beat me. But then again, when you see my strategy, it's pretty obvious. But yeah, I love me and my fire types. They're just so much fun. I love burning everything to the ground and spamming flamethrower. Or whatever other fire move I have. Unfortunately, it's not usually flamethrower anymore. My number one Pokemon type is Dark type. Yep. Dark type. Umbreon. Murkrow. And my baby. I fell in love with this thing all the way back in Silver. Houndoom. It was a cute, itty-bitty little fire puppy. Little dark fire puppy. So adorable. And then it evolves into this... It's like, okay, so it's this cute little fire, dark fire puppy. It evolves into a hellhound that slaughters everything. I was so ecstatic. I fell in love with this thing from looks alone, and then I started using it, and oh my god, I love it. I love Houndoom. I can never get enough of having Houndooms. If I could keep a Houndoom in real life, I would have a pack. I would have a freaking pack of Houndoom. I love it that much. By far, probably my favorite Pokemon of all time, and it's got some seriously heavy competition for it, but the fact that Houndoom was able to beat out even Charizard. Houndoom even beat out Charizard. If I do a top 10. Houndoom beats out Charizard. It is definitely my number one. But it's not the only one. It's definitely the heaviest hitter. But I also, I just, in general, I just like dark types. I mean, I have a very dark and twisted sense of humor, so it really shouldn't be too surprising to see dark on my list. At least for people that know me. Once you guys get to know me and such, you'll figure this out very quickly. But Umbreon, even though it's a pain in the butt to get either Espeon or Umbreon, I fought my way through the original Silver to get an Umbreon, and I will say defensively, I loved it. Offensively, I thought it could use some work. When I raised one in X and Y and actually get the chance to super train it, I will see if it's improved. I'm sure it has. I'm actually really looking forward to that. Murkrow. I love crows. Crows are probably one of my favorite birds. I think they are freaking hilarious because they are tricksters, and I see a crow Pokemon and it's like, okay, yeah, we're gonna get this. We're gonna work with this. This is gonna be cool. And Murkrow, I was very impressed with Murkrow. Unfortunately, I cannot say the same for Honchkrow. Thus, when I get a Murkrow, I don't evolve it. Part of it's the look of Honchkrow, and part of it's the one time I actually did evolve mine into a Honchkrow, I swear its stats seemed to drop. So Murkrow stays a Murkrow. It doesn't evolve. I have never raised a Mandibuzz. Shadowfang has. He had a Volibee, and he was kinda not really all that impressed. But then when it evolved and its stats shot through the roof, he's like, you have got to raise one of these. You have to raise one of these things. I still have not had the chance, but when I get the chance, I am definitely going to be raising a Mandibuzz, because I hear that just from what he says, if he says that it's freaking awesome, it usually is, and he's actually the one that's influenced some of this list. Not all of it, obviously. And then, of course, Sharpedo. It's a shark. I like sharks. I like dark sharks. So the fact that they made Sharpedo a shark Pokemon, I was thrilled. Probably why Gen 3 is actually one of my favorite generations. It's got some of my favorite Pokemon in it. Absol. I loved Absol I loved Absol originally. The fact that it got a Mega Form, I really like its Mega Form too. I can't say that for Salamence. I was actually very disappointed with its Mega Form. But Absol's, I liked Absol's. Absol's was pretty amazing. Crocodile. I am not a fan of ground types for the most part. Crocodile is a huge exception. I love my Crocodile. This thing is so freaking cool. And then, of course, his overall look, he's a crocodile. I mean, you really can't go wrong with a crocodile. I mean, it's the same reason I like Feraligatr as a water type. It's just because I like my reptiles. I mean, I used to watch Steve Irwin when I was growing up, and it's just a show that I kind of grew up on. And I just, for most part, I'm an animal lover. So most Pokemon that are animal based, I'm almost guaranteed to like them to some degree. And then also another dark type that I really like is Malamar. Okay, so the fact that it's two of my favorite types already had me intrigued. The fact that it's also a squid, I thought that this thing was going to be really cool. I was right. It's definitely one of my favorites. It's definitely one of the best dark and or psychic types that I've raised, with obviously a few exceptions. But for me, that is my list. If you agree with me, and some of you might, leave a like. If you didn't agree with me, which I'm sure there's probably a lot more of you that won't, then just do what you feel like doing. If you like this video, leave a like, comment, subscribe, whatnot, and I will talk to you guys soon. Happy hunting!